Hey there, you ready to get political? Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some fascinating articles about Kamala Harris and what's happening with Latino voters in California.
Mm.
Trust me, this is one election forecast you won't want to miss.
It's interesting, isn't it? California's always been considered a safe bet for Democrats, but the latest polls are showing a shift in the political landscape, especially among Latino voters.
Okay, so picture this.
Oh.
It's 2020, and Biden wins a landslide victory among Latino voters, securing a whopping 75% of their vote.
Right.
Fast forward to today, and a new poll from UC Berkeley and the LA Times reveals that support for Harris has plummeted to 54%, with Trump trailing at 35%. That's a huge GE drop.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
It's a significant change, and one that has political analysts buzzing. It seems that this new generation of Latino voters, many of whom are U.S.-born, are prioritizing different issues than previous generations.
It's like what we're seeing with Jay Martinez from our CBS article. He's a small business owner from Sacramento, and his family's history in California goes all the way back to the Bracero program. For those of you who may not know, the Bracero program was a guest worker program that lasted from the 1940s to the 1960s, allowing Mexican laborers to work temporarily in the United States, mostly in agricultural jobs.
Right.
Anyway, Jay voted for Hillary in 2016, but says he's switching his vote to Trump this time around because of the economy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of what political analyst Mike Madrid highlights in his book, The Latino Century. He argues that we're moving away from identity politics and entering an era where economic concerns are paramount, especially for this emerging demographic.
It really makes you wonder what's driving this shift. It's purely about economic anxieties, or are there other factors at play?
Well, if we consider the recent hurricane that just slammed into Florida, forcing Trump to postpone his town hall on Univision, it makes Harris's recent town hall on the very same network all the more intriguing.
Wow, you're right. It makes you wonder if the timing was purely coincidental or a calculated move by her campaign to capitalize on Trump's misfortune.
It definitely highlights the importance both campaigns are placing on courting Latino voters, but it also raises the question, can Harris connect with this demographic in a way that resonates with their concerns, especially given her unique background and her history on issues like criminal justice?
Speaking of her background, I was fascinated to learn from her Wikipedia entry that Harris comes from a multiracial family. Her mother was an Indian immigrant, and her father was Jamaican American, making her a living testament to the American melting pot.
Absolutely. And don't forget, she's the first Asian American and the first Black woman to hold the office of vice president, a historic achievement by any measure. But will her personal story be enough to resonate with voters who are struggling economically?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And let's not forget her professional background. Before becoming vice president, she served as the district attorney of San Francisco, then as California's attorney general, and then as a U.S. senator. Talk about a deep dive into public service.
It's a remarkable trajectory, but it's important to acknowledge that her time as attorney general, particularly during the tough-on-crime era of the 1990s and 2000s, could be a sticking point for voters who are looking for criminal justice reform.
You're absolutely right. That period was marked by stricter sentencing laws, increased incarceration rates, and a focus on law enforcement rather than rehabilitation.
Exactly. And those policies disproportionately impacted minority communities, which could alienate some Latino voters who are seeking a more progressive approach to criminal justice.
Okay, so we've got this complex backdrop of shifting demographics, economic anxieties, and Harris's own personal and professional history. Now let's add another layer to this intricate tapestry: immigration.
This is where things get really interesting. One of the most persistent narratives surrounding Harris is the whole border czar controversy.
Yeah, I remember seeing that all over the news. Didn't Trump and some Republicans try to label her as the border czar?
They did, and it's crucial to clarify that's not an accurate representation of her role.
So what exactly was she tasked with doing?
President Biden put Harris in charge of addressing the root causes of migration from Central America. That means tackling issues like poverty, violence, and climate change, the underlying factors that drive people to leave their home countries in the first place.
Right, because managing the border itself falls under the Department of Homeland Security, not the vice president's office.
Precisely. But despite this clarification, the border czar label stuck, particularly among those who oppose Biden's immigration policies. It's a classic example of how a catchy, albeit inaccurate, narrative can take root and spread like wildfire in our current media landscape.
And it's no secret that border crossings have reached record highs during Biden's presidency, which has only fueled the fire, right?
Yes, and it's important to remember that this is a complex issue with no easy answers. It's been decades in the making and is influenced by a multitude of factors, including economic disparities, climate change, and gang violence in Central America. It's simply not as simple as building a wall or implementing stricter border control measures.
So where does Harris fit into all of this?
Well, she's been trying to address the issue head-on, even visiting Guatemala and Mexico to see firsthand the challenges people face and to meet with government officials to discuss potential solutions.
That's right. I remember reading about those trips. She received quite a bit of criticism for some of her comments, like telling potential migrants, do not come, do not come.
Yes, that comment in particular sparked a lot of controversy, with some people praising her for taking a firm stance and others accusing her of being insensitive to the plight of asylum seekers. It's a delicate balancing act, trying to address the concerns of those who want stricter border enforcement while also acknowledging the humanitarian crisis at the border.
And let's not forget the political tightrope she's walking. She needs to find solutions that will appeal to a broad spectrum of voters, including those who are concerned about immigration and those who are advocating for a more compassionate approach.
Absolutely. It's a difficult position to be in, and there's no guarantee that any solution will satisfy everyone. It's a complex situation, and it highlights the challenges Harris faces as she tries to navigate these choppy political waters. She's trying to address the root causes of migration while also grappling with a surge in border crossings and a narrative that's often been painted with a pretty broad brush.
It's like she's caught in a whirlwind of competing priorities and expectations. On one hand, she has to address the concerns of voters who are worried about the impact of illegal immigration. And on the other hand, she needs to acknowledge the humanitarian crisis unfolding at the border.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It certainly is. And this is where her unique background and her experience as the daughter of immigrants could be both a blessing and a curse.
That's an interesting way to put it. How so? Well, she can speak to the immigrant experience in a way that few other politicians can. She understands firsthand the challenges and aspirations of immigrant families, but at the same time, her past policies, particularly her record as Attorney General, might raise red flags for some Latino voters who are looking for a more progressive stance on immigration.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like she's trying to bridge a divide between those who see her as a symbol of progress and those who are skeptical of her commitment to reform. What do you think her strategy will be moving forward?
Well, based on her recent actions and statements, it seems like she's trying to strike a balance between enforcing border security and advocating for comprehensive immigration reform.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Sure, on the enforcement side, she's been vocal about the need to secure the border and crack down on human smuggling rings. She's also called for increased funding for border security measures and technology.
And what about on the reform side? What steps is she taking to address the root causes of migration and create a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants?
That's where things get a bit more complicated. She's spoken about the need to address the poverty, violence, and lack of opportunity that drives people to leave Central America. But concrete solutions have been slow to materialize. Part of the challenge is that it requires cooperation from other countries as well as significant investment from the United States.
So it's not just about passing legislation here at home. It's about tackling a complex web of issues that extend far beyond our borders.
Exactly, and that's what makes this issue so challenging. It's not something that can be solved overnight or with a single piece of legislation. It requires a long-term, multifaceted approach.
And it's an issue that's often used as a political football, with both sides digging in their heels and demonizing the other. It's no wonder it's been such a thorny issue for so long.
You're right. It's easy to resort to fear-mongering and simplistic solutions, but the reality is far more nuanced. It requires careful consideration, empathy, and a willingness to work across the aisle to find common ground.
So where does that leave Harris as we head into the 2024 election? What are the potential pitfalls and opportunities she faces when it comes to immigration?
Well, the biggest pitfall is that this is an issue that can easily backfire. If she's seen as being too soft on immigration, she risks alienating moderate and conservative voters. But if she comes across as too harsh, she could lose support among Latino voters and progressives who are looking for a more compassionate approach.
So she's walking a tightrope, trying to appease different factions within her own party, while also appealing to a broader electorate.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
But with the Latino vote becoming increasingly crucial in swing states across the country, it's an issue she can't afford to ignore.
Absolutely not. How she handles immigration could make or break her chances in 2024.
It's a high-stakes game, and it seems like she's betting that her unique background and her personal story will resonate with voters who are looking for a leader who understands the complexities of immigration.
That's a gamble that could pay off, but it's still too early to say for sure.
It'll be interesting to see how she navigates these challenges in the months ahead.
Hmm.
But one thing is certain, her stance on immigration will be under intense scrutiny as we approach November 2024.
Absolutely. And it's not just her stance on immigration that's being scrutinized. Her overall ability to connect with Latino voters will be a major factor in the upcoming election.
You're right. And that connection goes beyond just policy positions. It's also about messaging representation and a deep understanding of the concerns and aspirations of this diverse and growing demographic.
Exactly. It's about demonstrating a genuine commitment to addressing the issues that matter most to Latino voters, whether it's the economy, healthcare, education, or immigration.
So it's not just about checking off boxes or pandering to specific groups. It's about authentically engaging with Latino voters and offering real solutions to the challenges they face.
Precisely. It's about building relationships, fostering trust, and demonstrating a genuine commitment to improving the lives of all Americans, regardless of their background or immigration status. Now, circling back to the earlier discussion about Harris's background and her experience as Attorney General, it's important to note that her record on criminal justice has also drawn criticism from some Latino voters.
Oh, that's right. We haven't really delved into that aspect of her career yet.
Right. So as you know, Harris served as San Francisco's district attorney from 2004 to 2011, and then as California's attorney general from 2011 to 2017. During that time, she developed a reputation for being tough on crime, which was in line with the prevailing political climate at the time.
That was during the era of mass incarceration, right?
Yeah.
When there was a big push for stricter sentencing laws and increased law enforcement presence in minority communities.
Exactly. And while some people praised her for her tough stance on crime, others argued that her policies disproportionately targeted minority communities and contributed to the mass incarceration crisis.
That's a really important point to bring up. How has she addressed those criticisms?
Well, she's acknowledged that the criminal justice system is flawed and that there's a need for reform. She's also spoken out about the racial disparities in the system and the need to address systemic racism.
But has she taken any concrete steps to address those issues?
Yes, she has. As Attorney General, she implemented several reforms, including implicit bias training for law enforcement officers, body cameras for police officers, and programs aimed at reducing recidivism rates.
That's good to hear. It sounds like she's trying to find a balance between her past record and the need for reform.
She is. But it's important to acknowledge that this is another area where she faces a delicate balancing act. She needs to convince voters who are concerned about her past policies that she's committed to reform, while also reassuring voters who support a tough-on-crime approach that she hasn't abandoned her commitment to public safety.
It sounds like, she's walking a tightrope, trying to balance the demands of different constituencies while also staying true to her own, evolving views on criminal justice.
It's a delicate dance, and it highlights the complexities of leadership in a rapidly changing world. What might have been considered a mainstream position a decade ago could be seen as outdated or even harmful today.
That's so true. The political landscape is constantly shifting, and leaders have to be able to adapt and evolve if they want to stay relevant and effective.
Absolutely. And that requires a willingness to listen, to learn, and to acknowledge past mistakes. It's about being open to new ideas and approaches, even if they challenge long-held beliefs.
So it's not just about being right or wrong, it's about being open to growth and change.
Exactly. And that's something that voters are increasingly looking for in their leaders, a willingness to engage in honest self-reflection and to acknowledge the complexities of these issues.
It sounds like Harris has her work cut out for her as she tries to navigate these choppy political waters and connect with Latino voters who are grappling with a range of concerns.
She does. But it's important to remember that this isn't just about one politician or one election cycle. This is about the future of American democracy and the role that Latino voters will play in shaping that future.
You're right, the Latino population is the fastest growing demographic in the United States, and their political power is only going to increase in the years to come.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for all politicians, regardless of party affiliation, to engage with Latino voters in a meaningful and authentic way.
It's not enough to just show up at campaign rallies or make empty promises. It's about listening to the concerns of Latino communities, understanding their lived experiences, and offering real solutions to the challenges they face.
Precisely. It's about building relationships, fostering trust, and demonstrating a genuine commitment to improving the lives of all Americans regardless of their background or ethnicity.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. It's given me a lot to think about as we head into the 2024 election. What are some of the key takeaways that you think our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to remember that the Latino electorate is not a monolith. Latino voters are diverse in their backgrounds, beliefs, and priorities. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to winning their support.
That's a really important point. It's easy to fall into the trap of making generalizations about entire groups of people. But the reality is far more nuanced than that.
Exactly. And I think another key takeaway is that the issues that matter most to Latino voters are often interconnected. The economy, healthcare, education, immigration, these aren't separate issues. They're all interconnected and they all impact the lives of Latino families in profound ways.
So it's not enough to just focus on one or two issues in isolation. It's about understanding how these issues intersect and impact the lives of real people.
Absolutely. And I think the final takeaway is that the Latino vote will be crucial in the 2024 election and beyond. Politicians who ignore this growing demographic do so at their own peril.
It's a powerful reminder that the face of American politics is changing, and the change is driven in no small part by the growing influence of Latino voters.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be engaged in American politics, and I'm eager to see how this demographic continues to shape the political landscape in the years to come.
Me too. And as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you to ponder. Can Kamala Harris, with her unique background and her complex political history, successfully bridge the divides within the electorate and emerge as a unifying figure in American politics? Or will the challenges she faces prove to be insurmountable? The answer to that question, my friend, will likely determine the course of American politics for years to come. So until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and stay curious.